Center The Center for World Networking was founded in the late 1980s, and our mission, run by all volunteers, is to facilitate connections between individuals and organizations that are doing good works for the planet and for personal healing as well. Tonight, we offer this event highlighting Center for Farmworker Families. We have speakers, live music, and video footage representing the important work that CFF has been doing for farm workers in our county and far beyond as well for quite some time. Now, we will welcome your questions at any time. You might have a thought that you'd like clarified or something to ask one of the speakers, and please do type it into the chat. Later in the evening, our moderator, Marianne Gabay, will represent your comments and questions within the program. Donations received this evening or at any time in the future can be earmarked to support Center for Farmworker Families by just clicking a donation button at our website and using the drop-down menu you will find there. I'd like to mention a couple of aspects of our center. The first being that the current bi-monthly issue of our publication, aptly titled The Network, is available in hard copy throughout Santa Cruz County. And you'll also find the full color version on this website's newsletter page. And there you'll also find some past issues which may be of interest. Our current issue includes the message for the year 2023, given to us by our teacher, Shri Yukteswar. And there are several interesting articles, including those about Center for Farmworker Families. So please feel free to take a look and find out more about CFWN, that's us, by browsing the website. Tonight's program is being recorded, and it will appear on our media page soon for future viewing. I mention this in case you have friends that might be interested in this topic and would like to learn more about Center for Farmworker Families, but perhaps were not available this evening for the live broadcast. Please do refer colleagues and friends and have them take a look. Back to our publication, The Network, we'd like you to know that your articles, stories, poetry, and visual art are always welcome for consideration to be published in upcoming issues. You can contact Rose using this email, editor@cfwn.org, to submit written or artistic inspiration or information about a worthy cause for which you would like more public awareness. We also extend the offer to host you in a Zoom broadcast to create more awareness of any educational or spiritual causes that you may champion. Join us, won't you, in our mission to spread the word regarding good works in our community and in the world. Lastly, you're welcome to share needs, services, and events with our extended community by using our email announcements list that goes out a couple times a week. And the email to use to place something on the announcements list is, drumroll, announcements@cfwn.org. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please pardon my levity as we now get into some very serious good works. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Freesia, for opening up the evening. Hello, everyone. My name is Marianne, and I'll be moderating tonight on behalf of the Center for World Networking. And my first joy is introducing our music tonight. And this is for Armando Alcaraz. Armando is a songwriter who sings and plays with the intention to heal through his music. He writes songs in English and Spanish and holds music meditation events to create healing spaces. Thank you, Armando.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. So I'm just going to open with a song. It's a song in Spanish, and it's a song about self-acceptance, and it's about how to. It's this idea that sometimes we look back at things we might have done, and we think, well, why did I do that, or why was I? What was I thinking then? And it's kind of a little bit of a sense of blessing those moments, because then we come back and find ourselves again. And it's that finding that help us also be encouraged. So that's kind of what the song is about. And I kind of was thinking, about farm workers, and it's a very difficult history, and so kind of thinking of bringing a sense of compassion for everybody in that sense. So I hope you enjoy. Cuando viajo a la luna, vuelo en alas de cristal y me pierdo en la luz de su ensueño, y la noche me envuelve en su mar, y me dejo caer a la tierra donde me puedas amar, y saco mi guitarra, mi compañera, dejo a la luna cantar. Yo sé que siempre olvido dónde podía volar. Mis olvidos bendigo, si no me pierdo, ¿cómo te he de encontrar? Si no me pierdo, ¿cómo te he de encontrar? Cuando viajo a la luna, vuelo en alas de cristal, traigo la luz de su ensueño, y la noche me envuelve en su mar, y me dejo caer a la tierra donde me puedas amar, y saco mi guitarra, mi compañera, dejo a la luna cantar. Yo sé que siempre olvido de cuando sabía volar. Mis olvidos bendigo, si no me pierdo, ¿cómo te he de encontrar? Si no me pierdo, ¿cómo te he de encontrar? Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Armando. That was so beautiful. And now I'd like to take a moment, and it will take just a moment, to introduce our main speaker tonight, Dr. Ann López. Dr. Ann López is the executive director of the Center for Farmworker Families. She is an emerita professor and taught courses in biology, environmental science, ecology, and botany in the biology department at San Jose City College for many years. She has a PhD from UCSC in environmental studies, where she studied the impact of the North American Free Trade Agreement on the farms of West Central Mexico. Her book, entitled The Farm Worker's Journey, summarizes the results, arguments, and conclusions of her research and was published by UC Press. Dr. López's research findings while interviewing Central America farm worker families and their family members in Mexico were fundamentally disturbing and life-transforming. As a result, she is actively attempting to create awareness about the human rights abuses that are endemic to every juncture of the migrant circuit. She has also initiated many projects on both sides of the border designed to alleviate some of the inordinate suffering experienced daily by migrant farm workers and their family members in Mexico. The Center for Farm Worker Families is a 501c3 nonprofit. Their website is designed to provide updates on the status of binational farm worker families and provides ways in which those who are interested can become involved with the work of improving their life circumstances. Dr. Ann?
Thank you so much, Mary Ann, for that lovely introduction, and Armando for your beautiful music. And I have to say that I am deeply honored to be here with you tonight, and that you have chosen Center for Farm Worker Families for a fundraising event. And I'm just humbled by the whole process, and thank you so much. Thank you. I'd like to start. Unfortunately, my news isn't that good because we have a crisis currently in South County with the levees breaking. And I'd like to read a passage here that was in the Santa Cruz Sentinel recently that I think expresses the issue. It says, for decades, officialdom struggled with the knowledge based on previous disastrous flooding in 1995 and other years that the levees needed to be rebuilt. The levees in place offer the lowest level of protection in California. So that's how much we regard our farm workers. And then beyond that, farm workers are the most impacted population from pesticides. And we use 13 million pounds of Talone 1,3-dichloropropene. This is a Prop 65 carcinogen and toxic air contaminant. And Talone is one of the 3 most commonly used pesticides. The good news just came out today is that the court in Alameda County is insisting, the Superior Court is insisting that the DPR and other organizations that control pesticides and their use go back to the drawing board and come up with a plan to protect the farm workers. And I'm just so pleased to see that. And I'm thinking that probably that today is the first day of spring, and maybe this is a new beginning for awareness with the issue that happened at Half Moon Bay and people shocked by the housing, if you could call it that, the broken levees, the porous levees in California, and also the exposure to pesticides. And quite frankly, I am sick and tired of meeting families that have children with one or more anomalies related to pesticide exposure. It's so common in South County, and the fact that it's normalized. Leukemia, cancers, ADHD, birth defects, learning disabilities, autism spectrum. Why are these things normalized? If this was going on in North County or Los Gatos, you can bet that there would be an uproar about it and it would be corrected right away. And I was interested in the fact that I spoke last week in Palo Alto, and as I went over Highway 17 past Lexington Reservoir, I thought to myself, you know, I never heard of levees breaking and flooding the town of Los Gatos with water. You don't hear that about Los Gatos, only Pájaro, where the farm workers live. And some of the information related to pesticides that is so concerning to me is that Hispanic students in Monterey County schools are 2.5 times more likely to attend schools near where pesticides are sprayed compared to white students. A new study from UCLA identified 13 pesticides linked to early childhood cancers that are in regular use in California. And these pesticides increase the risk of a child developing leukemia or brain tumors by as much as 60 to 238% if the mothers lived within 2.5 miles of where the pesticide is applied. More than 28 countries have banned 10 of the 13 pesticides, and yet in California, only 4 require permits. So we must transform this system of agriculture so that it's a more just system, so that we protect our environment and also protect ourselves, because really with the system as it is and the sprays that are used, we don't know what we're eating on the food we're eating, what kind of chemicals are on the food, even if it's organic food. We have no idea, because in one farm could be conventional, and if they spray, for instance, Tilon can travel up to 7 miles. It could go into an organic field, contaminate the plants. We think we're buying organic, and our food has these pesticides. So we need a new system. We need to transform industrial agriculture to regenerative organic agriculture. And there's studies, including the UN study and the Rodale Institute 30-year study, that shows that if we do that overnight, we could feed everybody on the planet. So the question is, why aren't we doing this? And I think, well, we've started an organization called CORA, Campaign for Organic Regenerative Agriculture, and we want to transform agriculture in this county so it's all organic and regenerative. And as far as what people can do to help the farm workers that have been evacuated, and there's been, by the way, 2,000 evacuated, they're lost, they have no idea where they're going to live, where they're going to get a change of clothes, where the food's going to come from. Various agencies are really stepping up to the plate to help them out. But I think what we need to do is to insist that this critical, essential population of workers upon which we and all people in this country depend for food that they're treated with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. And right now they're not, as evidenced by the pesticide issue and exposure, and also the breaking of the levees. So we need to change that. And there's three things that could transform farm workers' lives. Number one, comprehensive immigration reform. Nobody who has worked weeks, months, and years in the fields, bent over, picking our crops that we depend on, should be worried about deportation. We need these people. What would they do? What would we do without them? And so we need to change these laws so that people who come here and work hard in the field are not burdened with this horrible burden of fear of being captured, sent back to Mexico, having their families torn apart. It's cruel. It's absolutely inhumane. We need to give farm workers a living wage. They should not be dependent on charity for food, clothes, etc. They should be paid according to their value to society. And in my opinion, there is no bottom line more bottom than food. Food holds up the whole society. It's more important than anything else. And we need to acknowledge them for their work by paying them a livable wage. And finally, we need to work out a system where they can have a contract with the grower that hires them, simply because 22.5% of farm workers have their wages stolen. So not only are they living on the edge of poverty already, but then they go and work for a grower and the grower doesn't pay them. And if they complain, the grower says, I'll blacklist you or I'll deport you. And they go to an attorney, and the first thing that the attorney asks them is for a contract. And of course, they don't have one. So there's literally millions of dollars of farm worker wages stolen every year in this way. So those are three things that I think could transform their lives. And in the meantime, we all need to work on elevating their status and their importance. And I think to do that, we need to organize, appear in groups at city council meetings, board of supervisors meetings, and let these people know that are in charge that we're not going to stand for treating farm workers as if they're less than human in the future. So I think that pretty much covers my comments. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's mind-boggling where farm worker families fit into society and where they seem to fit into the political landscape. And yet, like you said, food it's essential. It's right there with breathing.
Yes, exactly.
You know, we don't go far without it. So I'd like to introduce our next panelist, Kevin Heuer. He is the Director of Engagement and Impact at the Community Foundation. Kevin's job is to help the foundation achieve its goals on issues affecting Santa Cruz County and to amplify the incredible work by donors and nonprofits in our community. He oversees community grant making, communications, leads nonprofit education work, and scouts out new opportunities to increase the foundation's impact. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Marianne, and really glad to be here. Thanks to Dr. Ann for her comments and Armando for the music. And good evening, everybody. Really appreciate the invitation to be with you and just your focus on the well-being of the farm worker community tonight. If you're a person who eats food, you benefit from farm workers and the service that they bring us. And it's one of the most marginalized groups in America and a group of neighbors that really often gets overlooked even here on the Central Coast. And I was really pleased to be able to participate tonight because I think Dr. Ann does as good a job as anyone about bringing attention to that issue and bringing change around that issue. So just for context, I am with the Community Foundation. We were founded in the aftermath of the floods of 1982 by locals who wanted a central place to give and a place that could be a hub to look out for the county's well-being, not just in the aftermath of a crisis, but for many years beyond. So 40 years later, we're here. We work closely with donors and help them give to causes that they're passionate about, and also work with effective nonprofits to help them succeed with their missions and make Santa Cruz County a place where everybody can thrive. So our mission is to bring together both people and ideas, but also resources to inspire philanthropy and accomplish great things. And I've gotten to accomplish a few great things with Dr. Ann, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But I've worked in the nonprofit world for 20 years, most of that here locally, and worked in housing, education, volunteer management, anti-poverty work, and philanthropy. But it wasn't until 2016 that I met Dr. Ann and the Center for Farmworker Families. So we've worked closely over the last 7 years on a number of issues and really gotten to know her as a community leader, as a nonprofit colleague, and really somebody I see as kind of a moral voice, someone both standing up for and speaking out for the farm worker community. So part of our job here is helping give away money that people have entrusted to the Community Foundation. So last year we made about $12 million worth of grants in Santa Cruz County. And our job is to really listen and learn from community experts, get to know the needs of the community, who's responding to those needs, what kind of solutions are being offered, and to help nonprofits access resources so that they can be successful in helping the community. As you can imagine, we get a lot of requests for funding and for giving money away, and it's unfortunate, but we have to say no to a lot of those. We do a lot of due diligence, trying to understand how best that organization is meeting community needs, how unique their solution is, what kind of leadership that they have, how stable they are, and how much community support they have for the future. And so we do a lot as we sort of scrutinize opportunities with these precious funds to see where can we get the best possible outcome for Santa Cruz County with these precious resources. So we look at a lot of things, and one of the things we like to say is the people closest to the pain are closest to the solutions. And in Dr. Ann's case, you know, she was right there in the fields. She's at the places where farm workers live. She's very close with leaders in the indigenous community and the agricultural community to know exactly what their needs are, because she's in direct conversation with them. That's something that really stood out to us at the Community Foundation. And when you know, the pandemic hit in 2020, I was here at the foundation, and we knew right away that there were going to be a lot of people left behind that weren't going to get any federal, you know, stimulus money, that weren't going to be protected, and yet still had essential jobs, but were really at risk and on the front lines. So I remember speaking to her and finding out about what she was doing and hearing from her about the needs and how dire it turned so quickly. So we quickly started funding Center for Farmworker Families at that time with direct grants that they could turn into cash assistance for families. And I remember being out there in Watsonville, side by side with Dr. Ann, just watching her interact with families as she wrote checks, and families grabbed food and clothing and other donated items for their families. And just seeing kind of the relief on people's faces as they saw that this was real. This was a connection, a bridge point that Dr. Ann had helped establish between people who cared and their livelihood, their well-being, you know, being cared for by others with these donations. So it's pretty special to see that. I count myself as privileged to really have gotten to see what this organization's been able to do under Dr. Ann's leadership. Also, as part of the pandemic, Dr. Ann was rightly very concerned about the children of farm workers not having access to school when school went remote. And I remember her advocating and saying, we can't let this stand. We can't leave these kids behind like this. Something has to change. And in particular, thinking about a community on the outskirts of Watsonville that did not have internet access. And so, kids might have gotten a device from their school, but they didn't have adequate internet access to actually tune in. And a lot of times they didn't have the support from their parents to be able to connect and learn from their teachers in that way. So Dr. Ann worked with us and our internet service provider, Cruz and the school district and some other partners. And we looked at what could be done to finally try and get broadband internet to Buena Vista Migrant Camp in Watsonville. And proud to say that we were successful in raising money and talent on the technical side to finally bring high-speed broadband internet to that community and connect about 125 families, I think, most of whom had children in the school district, to that service to make sure they got the same benefit that kids elsewhere did. Also, I remember in 2016, when the federal authorities were making raids on the Central Coast, including in Watsonville, there was a lot of, very, very fearful families afraid to go out. And I remember her calling me. I worked at Second Harvest Food Bank at the time, and hearing her stories of seeing the empty fridges, hearing the stories of people that had too much to risk to be out there trying to find food. And so very quickly, we set up these sort of clandestine food bank distributions. We found a way around some barriers that had held us up in the past, and we're able to kind of have a steady flow of dry goods and fresh produce that families could access without fear of getting on a list or getting picked up by authorities. And that was really based on trust, and her trusting me, and the leaders that she works with trusting her. And when I got to know her, it was really clear that she had earned that, the hard way. She'd come by that trust honestly, and that really showed. So, it's really been a pleasure to work with her on a number of issues. I'm really proud to be a funder of Center for Farm Worker Families. I'm proud to be a personal donor to the organization as well. And sometimes it's really complicated when you're trying to evaluate the difference that a nonprofit makes. And sometimes it's really simple. And in this case, I think this is just a little organization that could doing, both great work on sort of direct service, but also education, which is really important. And part of why I appreciate everybody being on the call tonight, and then advocacy to try and change the system for the better. So if you care about any of those things, this is a great organization to track along with and follow as they continue to try and make progress on the issues that they're here to improve. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. And before you get off so quick, could you please mention just a little bit about the fundraiser that's happening in April that one of the people at the foundation is going to be putting on?
Yeah, so another one of my favorite nonprofits in Santa Cruz County that also sometimes flies under the radar is called Pie for the People. And it's a community fundraiser led by Jenny Kurzweil, who's our communications officer at the Community Foundation. And she's going to be hosting a fundraiser on April 30th. This is at the Homeless Garden Project on the west side of Santa Cruz at their farm. So April 30th, 1 to 3 p.m. There's going to be a pie potluck. You can bring your own pie. You can purchase a pie. You can go and just donate money and eat all the pie that you want. But the proceeds of that are going to benefit the Center for Farm Worker Families. So they've typically done a wonderful job of having a sort of shared celebration, a little bit of inspiration and messaging from the nonprofit. So it's a great place to bring a family member or bring a friend and feel really good about both contributing and get a nice full belly.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Kevin. So
Yeah.
now we're going to get a chance to see some video footage of the Center for Farm Worker Families. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce the videographer for tonight's piece. His name is Steve Herrera, and he teaches religious studies at Notre Dame School in San Jose and has been teaching high school for 44 years. He is a deacon in the Diocese of San Jose and works with the social ministries of St. Teresa's Parish in San Jose. He has conducted dozens of justice immersion trips globally in the US and has assisted in the Farm Worker reality tours. Steve is the former president of the Sacred Heart Community Service Board of Directors in San Jose and also serves on the St. Joseph's Family Center Board of Directors in Gilroy. He is a board member of the Silicon Valley Interreligious Council, and he has an MA in theology from the University of San Francisco with a focus on social justice. Steve enjoys videography and has filmed Center for Farm Worker Services several times in support of their important work.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Ann López, the Director of Center for Farm Worker Families. Thank you for joining us here today. And what we're having today is a monthly distribution of food, clothes, household goods. Usually we have chiropractors, masseuses, baby toys. We provide food. We're partnered with the Second Harvest Food Bank here in Watsonville. So we give out food, household goods, including shampoo, soap, paper towels, diapers, baby wipes, everything that farm workers need but generally cannot afford. And this year has been especially difficult for farm workers. With the drought, there's lands all around the city that are not even planted so far this year. They're just barren. And so farm workers usually at this time of year would be working up to 10 hours a day, up to 6 days a week. And now they tell me they can only get work for a maximum of 3 to 4 hours a day. And consequently, they don't have enough funds for their rent, for food, for maintaining their family. So it's a very difficult year. And add to that COVID risks. And if there's wildfires in the future, the risks are tremendous. So we're doing all we can to help them out with that. We're concerned also about pesticide use. This is a time of year when pesticides are most used, and there's been some studies that have come out that I personally find to be alarming. They've done studies and found that the 11 counties where most people of color, particularly Latinos and Latino farm workers live, have some of the highest pesticide exposure. 8 million pounds, that's 4.2 pounds per person in these 11 counties, as compared with other counties where there are other ethnicities like white people that have only 1/3 of a pound. So there's a tremendous disparity, and it's as if we don't value these people enough to provide them with the protections that everybody else is entitled to. 10,000 to 20,000 farm workers a year are poisoned by pesticides and fall ill. Farm workers have a average life expectancy of only 49 years. And of course, this is due to pesticide exposure, poor nutrition, crowded living conditions, overwork, etc. And we need to reform the conditions that afflict this agricultural labor force that feeds us.
So I hope you can join us in providing us with donations. And I would like to encourage you to go to your local New Leaf Market and vote for us for the Envir Token program, because the New Leaf has been very helpful in giving us funds that allow us to buy the food that these people need. So thank you very much, and I wish you a happy weekend.
That was wonderful. And we'd now like to open up the opportunity that maybe some of you have some, excuse me, my light here doesn't want to seem to work. We'd like to open up the chat now. And if any of you have any questions for Kevin or Anne regarding the Center for Farm Worker Families, or specific questions about them, please go ahead and put a question into the chat, and I will go ahead and address our panelists. I'll give you guys a moment to see if there are any questions. I have found this to be quite educational myself in terms of really realizing what kind of network is already in place to help the farm workers, and yet the need for additional funding and support by the community, especially at this time as the levees have broken and the floods are flooded, the fields are flooded, and therefore the families are not working again. Last year it was because of the drought. This year it's because of too much rain. But it seems like in any instance, they're always affected by what is happening directly by Mother Nature and climate change. So this is a group of people that need to be protected and helped, because they work directly around such wide swinging issues from drought to floods. So we got a lot going on there. Okay, so I do have one question. In addition to funds, which are the greatest need, are donations of household goods and clothing still welcome? If so, who do folks contact to make those type of donations? So I believe that would be a Dr. Ann question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ann.
Okay, great. Oh, start the video. Okay. We have a location where we do see, spotlighted your video. Okay. We have a location in Watsonville where we do the distributions, which you just saw a movie about, or a video about. And it's at 156 Elm Street, ELM Street in Watsonville. And you can take your donations there. As far as clothing, we don't take anything larger than a large. We don't take any plus sizes because the people are small. But other kinds of donations, yes, we can use them. And you can just take them to 156 Elm Street, knock on the door. Usually there's somebody there that can help you unload. If not, you can leave your items on the front porch. And when the family returns, they'll sort everything out, put the items in the shed in the back to store them. And then at the next distribution, they'll be put out for farm workers to choose from. So yes, we do. definitely want in-kind type of donations.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. Another question, Helen was asking, donating to the Center for Farm Worker Families versus donating to the Community Foundation, with a question.
Sure, maybe I'll take that
both
one
of
and you can.
Yeah.
Sure. So, yeah, by all means, please give directly to Center for Farm Worker Families. We love donors establishing a direct connection with a nonprofit, getting tuned into their newsletters and the information that they're putting out about events, educational opportunities. So that would be my first recommendation. People also sometimes like to give in other ways. Sometimes folks ask us about, giving through maybe stock that they have or a retirement fund or more complicated gifts like that. That's part of our specialty, is helping people give through planned gifts or through non-cash gifts. So we're always happy to talk to people and to help them with that. And then, right now in Pajaro, we're funding a lot of different organizations. So if somebody's wanting to feel a part of multiple different efforts through one donation, they can give to our disaster fund on our website, and that's a chance to support both direct financial assistance grants that our partners are doing, a medical clinic, and medical supplies that are being donated, a variety of different ways that nonprofits are supporting that are all getting grants from our disaster fund. So folks can see who we're granting to on our website and decide, yeah, that's something I want to give to and support, and we get those funds right out into the community. But at the same time, definitely recommend folks starting a relationship by giving directly to the Center for Farm Worker Families. I do that myself, and I appreciate having that sense of sort of proximity to an issue that I care about.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I do have a question here from Arpana. Are there opportunities for volunteers to assist with food distribution or other items?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, if you'd like, you can call me and we can talk about what kind of volunteer work you're interested in. I'm at 831-335-5492. So definitely call and we'll discuss it. Or else you can come to one of our distributions. We have them on the second Friday of every month. And from about 2 to 5, we set up from 1 to 2. And if you want to come in and see what we do, we could discuss where you might want to fit in at that time. So there's many options.
Oh, that's excellent, Anne. Thank you so much. A question from Celia. What efforts are in place to support those impacted by the floods in the Pajaro Valley?
Kevin, I think that's probably you have the bigger picture, so maybe you can address that question.
Yeah, the most important thing is, people really need cash. They need the flexibility to be able to spend money on what their family needs. It varies. For some, that might be a motel stay because they've got someone in a medically vulnerable situation that's not as appropriate for congregate shelter at the fairgrounds. It might be, someone who's trying to get their car fixed that was flooded out so that they can get back to work. It might be somebody that needs to, pay a family member for being able to double up or, triple up with them in their house and contribute financially while they're there. So it's nice for families to have a little bit of agency and flexibility. So cash is really helpful for that. We're distributing through our partners $500 prepaid Visa cards that they can spend. Whether their family is documented, mixed immigration status, undocumented, does not matter. They're still eligible for this. It's prioritizing people who lost housing or lost their job, or in some cases both. So there's an initial gift card and then an assessment for additional financial aid beyond that. That's being done by folks like Community Bridges, Catholic Charities, Community Action Board, other partners like that. And then, there's a lot of work to collect donated goods and try and meet people's needs for some of the basics like clothes and diapers and things like that. So that work is happening through other partners, including one group called Raíces y Cariño. Salud para la Gente is responding medically, as I mentioned. Casa de la Cultura is another nonprofit based in Pájaro that's doing direct aid for families. So far we've, since last week, probably donated more than $500,000 to nonprofit partners, mostly for that cash aid. That'll continue as we're able to fundraise through our disaster fund. We'll get that right back out. But this is going to be a long haul. This is a very, very wide scope disaster. Folks will not be returning to their homes in many cases for a long time. And the damage will be very thorough for what they return to. So it's going to be a lot of support that probably more than 800 families are going to need for a long time. And, encourage folks to give now, but also let folks know in their network. I know some people in my network were not really aware of the scope of this disaster because of, its location or just not as tuned in. So make sure people in your networks know that it's a very challenging situation. Will be that way for a while. And yet helping is really easy. And there's a lot of great partners to work through.
Thank you, Kevin. That was wonderful.
Can I just say one? Pardon me? Can I just
want to respond to that?
Yes, no, what Kevin said is perfect. I'm just also wanted to mention that Center for Farmworker Families is purchasing gift cards to $100 gift cards to Target, because what we're hearing is people need food and a change of clothes. So we give gift cards and they can go to Target and get both. So that's another one of our activities to help out.
Great. That's wonderful. I do have another question from Anonymous. Anne rightfully talked about the pesticide problem. There are a number of nonprofit organizations tackling this problem.
Right.
Anne mentioned the Campaign for Regenerative and Organic Agriculture. I've never heard of this group. Could she speak to best organizations she feels regarding this?
The best organization regarding pesticides, or what?
I think regarding trying to get less pesticide, the organizations that are fighting against the pesticide usage.
Right. Well, we share an office with Californians for Pesticide Reform, and they have meetings. They're called SAS meetings, Safe Ag, Safe School. And then on Monday nights, we have CORA meetings, Campaign for Organic Regenerative Agriculture. I think there's one coming up next Monday at 7:30 on Zoom. There's also Pesticide Action Network, and there's Beyond Pesticides. Those are, I think, the big ones. And we're all working together. The issue that I see that I feel really passionate about is the Department of Pesticide Regulation. And it is a sub-agency of the, let's see, what is it? California EPA. Okay, so wouldn't one assume that the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, would be interested in protecting the environment? Yes. And this DPR, Department of Pesticide Regulation, is an agency with the EPA. Now, their funding comes from the sale of pesticides. When I found that out, I know, I had to gasp. I thought, what? Where is the conflict of interest? Who's resolving this? I mean, when you're a department within the EPA and you're supposed to be managing pesticides and your funding comes from the sale of pesticides, I don't get it. I'm sorry. It's just
it's very disillusioning to me. And I think that that issue really needs to be dealt with head on. I mean, I don't know how we progress with that.
Boy, talk about a catch-22, or putting a coyote in charge of the hen house.
Yeah, yes,
That seems to really
exactly.
kind of fit the bill there.
Right, right. Conflict of interest, my
For,
goodness.
for sure. And then you wonder, how can they resolve anything if if they don't have funding because there's no pesticides being.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's very distressing to me.
Okay, so are there any final questions from any of our participants for either Anne or Kevin regarding funding or the farm workers, or almost you could call it a humanitarian crisis in the Pajaro
Yes,
Valley,
that's right.
between the loss of usable farmland
Right.
and the impact not only to the farm worker families, but other families living in the valley and other businesses. It's really kind of our own little local humanitarian climate crisis.
Right. That's right.
And, it makes us really grateful here at the Center for World Networking that we're having this time now with the two of you. We thought about this last November, but it's really hard to know how the world will progress in those few months, but the spotlight is really on you. And Kevin, it's amazing what the foundation is doing, not
Yes.
only for the farm worker families and for the population in the Pajaro Valley, but for for Santa Cruz County, for
Yes.
being so mindful in looking for ways to support the county in just being better and supporting those undermet communities.
Exactly.
Thanks. It's our real privilege, and we only do it because of partners, and generous community members. So for anybody wanting to act on that sense of frustration or that sense of injustice, giving is a great way to do that from the comfort of home, and to stay plugged in to the folks that are out there while you may be at work or attending to other things in your life. There's amazing volunteers and groups doing the work on your behalf that you can get plugged into.
Great.
Oh, thank you very much. So I do want to reiterate tonight that all donations made on behalf of the farm worker families through the Center for World Networking will be transferred 100%. We're a 501c3, they're a 501c3. You get the benefit of a write-off, they get the benefit of cash assistance to help the families that are in need. And I believe Ray has posted another button on the chat page for people to make donations. So we're making it as easy as possible. Click of a button to be able to do some good in your community tonight. And so and again, just to reiterate, if you want to call Dr. Ann, you put your number out, Ann. We wouldn't do that, but you did. So her number is 831-335-5492. If you need to reach her regarding volunteer opportunities or items you might have for donation or other work that you might be able to do on behalf of the Center for Farm Worker Families. So I believe that concludes the discussion part of the evening tonight. Thank you guys so much. And we'd like to introduce Armando again to close us out with a beautiful song. And thank you everyone for coming and attending and learning something tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And to finish off is another song in Spanish. And this one is called Bring the Holy Rain. And it's also this idea of, sometimes just a little bit, you're thirsty, just a little bit of water makes a big difference. And I think it goes really well with thinking about donating tonight. Like, whatever you can, whatever you have, can make a big difference. But this is also, the song also speaks at a metaphorical level of how, it's only a little bit that we need to remember ourselves. So. Trae un poco de agua a este desierto de alegría, nada más espinas y el calor azotador me acompañan a mi alrededor. Nada más un poco hace falta para abrir los ojos y voltear al cielo otra vez, ver al sol en su grandeza en vez de correr de él. Trae la lluvia santa, fresca de tu amor, a mojar la tierra blanda donde reposa mi corazón, para que me abrace y me lleve hasta tu centro al descanso eterno de tu voz. Cántame al oído aquella canción que me revelaba el misterio del abismo y la magia del amor. Nada más dos notas hacen falta para recordar que lo que se fue un día habrá de regresar cuando encuentres dentro tu cantar. Trae la lluvia santa, fresca de tu amor, a mojar la tierra blanda donde reposa mi corazón, para que me abrace y me lleve hasta tu centro al descanso eterno de tu voz, al descanso eterno de tu voz. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay. You'd think after 3 years of us all being on Zoom, we'd have this down. Thank you, Armando. I want to, once again, on behalf of Center for World Networking, thank you all for joining us this evening. And heartfelt thanks to our presenters for their articulate representation of our farm worker community and their needs and the conditions currently. The beautiful music, we thank you again, Armando, and also for the beautiful video that was contributed. And I thank Marianne for gracefully moderating the evening. And lastly, our webmaster, Ray, for his care and expertise in weaving us all together and bringing the broadcast out into our community. We hope that those of you that have joined us tonight feel more informed about the situation of our neighbors and inspired to help Center for Farm Worker families in their beautiful efforts to be of assistance. Please consider a donation of any amount, and consider as well if you may be a liaison to a business who may be interested in joining this important effort. The needs are at times overwhelming, and we can be reminded of the words of the beautiful person of service, Mother Teresa, who said, among many other wise things, we can do no great things, perhaps only small things with great love. So thank you, Dr. Ann. Thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you again in another presentation of Center for World Networking.
I do have one more. I have one person asking, will the recordings be available later? And where will they be able to find them?
Yes, I did mention that, but at the very beginning. So it's good to mention it again that this presentation has been recorded and it'll be available at our website. That's CFWN.org, which is how we all came here to get tonight. We have a media page, and that's where you can either view it yourself if there's something you want to hear again, or refer to friends so that perhaps we can spread the ripples of this good energy out even farther. So again, it's CFWN.org, media page for the recording. Thank you.
And for anybody who would prefer to mail in a donation as opposed to using the website, we do have a post office box, P.O. Box 796, SoCal, California, 95073. And I believe that concludes tonight's presentation. Thank you to the participants, and thank you to everyone who attended. Namaste.